I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Utah Wildlife Board, October 1st, 2020. I'm going to start off with some information on COVID again that we're dealing with. I'm going to read a statement from the state. Due to COVID-19 pandemic and the ability of the virus to spread from person to person, the governor has implemented a number of executive orders directed at controlling the spread of the virus by minimizing face-to-face interactions. Public gatherings are strongly discouraged by the CDC, state of Utah, and local health departments since they facilitate face-to-face contact and pose an elevated risk for virus transmission. The Division of Wildlife Resources and the chair of this public body have determined that public gathering at Regional Advisory Council and Wildlife Board meetings presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who attend, and will conduct this meeting using a full electronic format. This meeting format is authorized by recent amendment to the Utah Code, an executive order by Utah Governor Gary Herbert, and will be temporarily used in place of the in-person public meeting that usually occur around the state. Anyone wishing to comment on the agenda, topics, and future meetings, or to observe this meeting may do so by logging on to the division's webpage at https://wildlife.utah.gov/feedback.html, where instructions and links are provided. At this time, I'd like to call the roll, just make sure that everybody is present. I'm going to start with the Wildlife Board first, and then we'll go to the RAC. Kevin Albrecht.
Here.
Randy Dirth.
Here.
Donnie Hunter.
Here.
Carl Hurst.
Here.
Wade Heaton.
Here.
And Brett, did you make it by chance, Selman? I don't think Brett's going to make it. If he does, he'll join us later. I'm going to start with the RAC. Justin Oliver.
Here.
Brock McMillan.
Here.
Braden Richmond.
Here.
Chris Wood, standing in for Tricia Hedin.
Here.
And Brett Prevadell.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, everyone is present except board member Brett Selman. We've got a lot of DWR people available today. There's 42 people that are on this meeting right now. So any questions that the board has going forward, or the RAC, there should be someone here that can answer your questions. At this time, I'd like to call for approval of the agenda for today. Someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, Byron, I'll make a motion to approve that agenda.
And
Thanks,
I'll
Donnie.
second that.
Second from Wade Heaton. I have a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote. Kevin Albrecht,
Aye.
Randy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
The agenda is approved. Like a motion for our past minutes at our last meeting. To approve those minutes. That was our work meeting.
This is Randy. I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Byron.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. I'll call the roll. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
Stands approved. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Director Fowlks for an update from the division. Director, if you're ready, go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome to the board, the RAC chairs, and to the DWR personnel on the call, and also those who are watching on YouTube. as we live feed this meeting. So just a few updates since the last time we met, since it was such a short time ago. There's not a lot. Did want to talk about in our habitat section. Obviously, this has been a pretty horrific fire year around the West, including Utah. We've got 36 large fire projects totaling 100,000 acres that we're looking at rehabbing at a cost of $16.3 million through WRI. 1.3 million pounds of seed are going to go through the Ephraim warehouse to do this work. It's as Eric Edgley said, it's all hands on deck to get this stuff done and get things started back in order after these horrendous fires. The other thing in habitat, we did finalize a purchase of 52 acres of desert tortoise habitat in Washington County using a grant, Section 6 grant from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service of $4 million. This will help protect and enhance the habitat for the desert tortoise down there. Hopefully, at some point, we can get that species downlisted or delisted. And Washington County was very supportive of that purchase, that land purchase. So we don't do those things unless the county's on board. In the LE program, Jay wanted me to let everybody know that the K9 program's up and running, and we have 4 dogs, 4 dog handlers, and we're having lots of success out there finding evidence and helping with searches. And it's also just such a great PR tool for our agency. So that program is running well, and we're looking to add more dogs as we go. In licensing, Kenny wanted me to remind you that Bobcat permits went on sale today, and that the limited entry cougar application period closes on October 6th. Then the last update I have is Marty Bushman, who's on the call and is here, is leaving us to go to work for water rights on a very important project, the Lake Powell pipeline in particular. I just want to take this opportunity. I've worked with Marty over 20 years and relied heavily on his advice and counsel, and he will be missed at the division, but he's close. I can just run down. But I really do appreciate what Marty brought to the table, and I wish him well in his future endeavors with water resources, or water rights, sorry. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mike. Are there any questions from the board members for the director? Hearing none, that brings us down to our first action item. There will be no presentation given. I assume everybody had a chance to go online and view. We do have one item we need to add to that. Randy Oplinger wanted to add one more part that was left out of his presentation. Randy, are you online and ready to do that?
Yeah, I am. I'd be happy to do that right now or whenever you want me to.
You want to do that right now, Randy, before we start?
Yeah, this will be real quick. It's really just an adjustment to one of our regulation proposals. This is the Fish Lake, the spearfishing closure dates. Really our intention of proposing a change in the spearfishing closure dates was right now as it stands, the spearfishing closure date at Fish Lake is September 15th, but the statewide harvest closure date for kokanee salmon is September 10th. So what it does is it creates a 6-day window where there's some ambiguity in our regulations on whether or not kokanee salmon can be harvested or not harvested at Fish Lake by spearfishing. What we realized looking over what we proposed for a regulation change, we proposed that we would run it from the first Saturday, or allow spearfishing technically from the first Saturday in June through September 10th. So the word through implies that spearfishing would be allowed on September 10th, which is technically the first day of the spearfishing closure statewide. So we just want to change that closure date to run through September 9th instead of through September 10th. So that would imply that it would close the day before we would have that seasonal closure statewide for kokanee salmon.
Okay. Thanks, Randy. Any questions from the board?
Randy, this is Carl. I think we all received a letter from Danny Potts about tags and northern pike, I believe, on Utah Lake. Is this the appropriate time to talk about that?
We can talk about it. I think I know where we're going with this, and you guys are welcome to discuss it more. Right now, there's a technical regulation on northern pike at Utah Lake, but we're also doing a study at Utah Lake right now where we've got, I think right now it's 8 tagged fish, tagged northern pike in Utah Lake, and I think we're going to get that up to maybe 30 tagged northern pike over the next 6 months or so. These are research fish that we would like those fish to stay in the water so we could collect the data. They've got the radio tags in them so we can track the movements of pike and learn more about their behaviors within Utah Lake. So I think what Danny Potts is bringing forward is a recommendation that we keep the catch and kill closure on our catch and kill regulation for northern pike at Utah Lake, with the exception of tagged fish, which should be easily identified by anglers because we want to keep those fish in the water.
From your comments, I'm hearing that would be a good idea.
I think from our perspective, that would be a good idea because we get valuable data from these fish. They're going to help us with some of our northern pike control efforts down the road if we can learn more about the behavior of these fish. So I think we would prefer that those fish stay in the water so we could track their movements more.
Thank you.
Director, are you ready for the comments you received or we received online on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Let me bring that up. You all have received those comments. The fishing recommendations, contest rule recommendations were supported by 33.33%. There are only 3 comments. One was neutral and the other was opposed. And you got to read the particulars of what their concerns were. So not a lot of comment on the coming through the web on the fishing regulations. I do need to ask a clarifying question of Randy. Are we changing our official recommendation, or does the board need to include those changes you just talked about in their motion with whatever they want to do?
I think there's 2 parts of it. One of it is us just changing one of our existing proposals. So the Fish Lake proposal, the way we worded it originally was to have a seasonal closure on spearfishing, or sorry, to allow spearfishing for at Fish Lake between the first Saturday in June through September 10th each year. We just want to modify that wording to allow spearfishing at Fish Lake from the first Saturday in June through September 9th of each year. And then the second one, the Utah Lake one, that would be a new recommendation bring forward. So that would be catch and kill with the exception of tagged fish for northern pike at Utah Lake.
Okay, that good. That clarifies it for me. I just wanted the board to make sure that if they made a motion to approve as presented, that it would include the Fish Lake regulation, but not the Utah Lake one. So anyway.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the RAC? Brett, did you have something you wanted to bring up?
Yes. You're talking to me in the Northeast region, right?
Brett Udell, yes, sir.
We had an issue with the Flaming Gorge reciprocal license discrepancies between the 2 states of Wyoming and Utah. And the local DWR staff has attempted in their coordinating meetings to bring this issue up with not much success. It's probably an issue that needs to be dealt at a higher level. So the Northeast RAC voted unanimously to just draft a letter to send to the Wildlife Board and encourage that dialogue happens at a higher level, whether that's the director level or the board level, and maybe try to get some success on having that discrepancy and confusion of when you cross the state line addressed. So I've sent that letter at the request of the Northeast RAC, and I don't know exactly how it fits into this fishing regulations item. It's more of just a side issue that is going to take some time.
Brett, this is Randy. Do we know about how much money Wyoming gets off the additional $20 per license that they get from that?
The comment was made in the meeting that they make approximately $130,000, and so they're not too thrilled about changing it down. And I think that was the total amount, Randy, not the difference between the two.
I believe that is correct. That's a total amount. I think it may be actually $150,000 that they generate off of reciprocal stamps.
So would it be basically, I'm trying to think what the board can do. Would we be basically raising the Utah one? The Utah fee?
We didn't really have a specific recommendation. It's just confusing to cross the state line with different regulations. And they wanted the RAC was wishing for a true reciprocal agreement where whether it's one tag or whether it's equitable tag.
This is Craig Walker. What we've been trying to negotiate with Wyoming Game and Fish is what we would term true reciprocity, which is more analogous to what we see at Lake Powell or Bear Lake, where one state's license allows you to fish either side of the reservoir. Ideally, that's what we would push for, not a kind of price war situation.
And I'll just kind of build on that. I mean, we've got similar arrangements like that for Bear Lake right now and Lake Powell. So we've got one more interstate water. It's going to be Flaming Gorge, where it's a different situation where you have to have these reciprocal stamps. So I think that's kind of what we're pushing for, is arrangement more like Bear Lake and Lake Powell. Just a little bit more background on that. We have been proposing this and pushing this for a few years, and we haven't seen a lot of movement from Wyoming heading that direction. It seems like there's some resistance on their end. And I think some of it is related to that $150,000 that they raise every year off this reciprocal stamp. That's good money in their pockets. And this arrangement, if we were to go down this route, even though it would be simpler for anglers, it does take some money out of their pocket.
This is Carl. I mean, we're charging, if they want to fish our side, it's $10. So are we making less money or more money than that 150? I mean,
I'm not sure what we're making, but it's definitely less than that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's less than that. And one other thing to point out, just for you all as a piece of background information, is the fact that the price point difference when you actually combine the resident cost for a license and the cost of the reciprocal stamp on either side of the border is about $13.
Chairman, Brock will probably chime in here, but the same discussion occurred in the Central Region. They did not draft a letter to the board, but I indicated I would carry their wishes to the board of a strategy or a letter from the board asking that Wyoming cooperate with this. I mean, Director, I guess we're just looking for strategy on how this could happen.
Correct. Well, I can weigh in on this issue. We, as Randy said, we and Craig both said, we've been trying administratively to get this resolved for ever since it came into play. It's been in play for a few years now. We have not had success. I think in large part due to that there's pretty large support with their commission up there to maintain status quo. And so I guess if I would make a suggestion to this board is that you write a letter to their commission requesting their consideration of the change. I think that I don't think it's Wyoming Game and Fish has been reticent to push hard on this because their commission supports it. So that'd be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the RAC motion summaries, and then we can come back to this item later. I'll start out with the Northern Region, Justin Oliver.
There was a motion made to pass as presented, and it did pass unanimously. There was discussion on on this letter as well, and we felt that it would be best coming from the Wildlife Board that a letter be drafted and sent to the state of Wyoming. We would, as a RAC, we discussed, after seeing the draft of that, if it required, if you wanted us to sign it, we would, but we would like it to be one letter and have it presented by the Wildlife Board. But as far as the action goes, it passed unanimously to follow the proposal of the division.
Thanks, Justin. Brock McMillan.
Thanks, Byron. There was a motion from the Central Region to pass the recommendation as presented, and that passed unanimously. Then we also had a second recommendation, as Carl pointed out. We had a motion to recommend that the Wildlife Board draft a letter to send to the Wyoming Commission seeking reciprocity on Flaming Gorge. That also passed unanimously.
Thank you. Braden Richmond.
Yeah, we also discussed that letter and just felt like, we would support the Wildlife Board writing the letter. There wasn't a lot of discussion on that, but we felt like it was a good thing, but we didn't make a motion on it. So we did make a motion to accept as presented, and that passed unanimously.
Thank you. Chris Wood.
Good morning. The Southeastern Region RAC made a motion to approve the recommendations proposed by DWR, and that passed unanimously.
Thank you. Brett Prevadale.
Yes, the Northeast RAC approved as presented unanimously, and then pulled out the Flaming Gorge letter issue and approved that unanimously. The Wildlife Board at their discretion.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board or discussion on this item?
I guess I'd like to make a proposal that the Wildlife Board write a letter to the Wyoming Commission asking them to consider a true reciprocity between the two states, just as we have a Lake Powell and Bear Lake with Idaho and I guess Nevada, Arizona, whichever one's down there.
Does the board want to add this to a motion or make this a separate item with a motion for just this letter that Randy mentioned? What's your feelings on that, board?
I think, Mr. Chairman, this is Wade. I think Randy's already got one foot through the door, so it might be just as easy to go ahead and handle this separately. And if that was in form of a motion, Randy, I would certainly second that and support this idea.
That was a motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for a letter from the board to the Wyoming commissioners on reciprocity to make it equal between both states at Flaming Gorge. Is that correct, Randy?
Yes.
I'll call for a vote. Kevin Albrecht.
Yes.
Randy Dirth.
Yes.
Donnie Hunter.
Yes.
Carl Hurst.
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll go back now to the division's recommendations.
This is Randy. I got one more question for Randy. I know there was at least one a comment we saw that had allowing the filleting of kokanee salmon at Strawberry Reservoir. I've received quite a bit of other input on that. Is there, and I know there's a slot limit on the cutthroat trout there, but is there any reason we can't be filleting salmon or kokanee salmon on Strawberry, just like we can the other reservoirs?
Yeah, I think the main reason ties back into the history of Strawberry and the fact that we've historically had some issues with Utah chub populations there, and we've put a lot of cutthroat trout in there over time to help control the chub populations. And again, this kind of ties back into us being able to identify the fish and potential overharvest of those cutthroat that are crucial for keeping that chub population in check, which helps keep that fishery as a whole kind of operating how it is, because there is, again, that history of chub getting out of control there and creating some problems with the fishery declines as a whole.
I know that it's, to me, it's quite easy to tell the side of a cutthroat if you leave the skin on it, which I think most flavors do. But is that, I mean, would it be a big problem with our regulation staff out there to monitor that?
That might be a question for law enforcement, but I do think that being able to see, identify the fish through the fillet by leaving skin on would provide a solution to that.
This is Jay Shirley, Chief of Law Enforcement. My only comment to that would be, it's also the size of the fish that you're trying to make sure that we're able to get to, whether it's 15 to 22. So just the skin gives us the identification of that fish, but not necessarily the size.
Is there a slot limit on kokanee though? I don't believe there is.
No, just the overall fish coming out of there, we need to be able to identify. And if leaving the skin on would be something that could be looked at, but the totality of it, we for sure need to make sure that we're square on that, because strawberry's been one of those that we've worked long and hard to make sure that we're protecting it from that chub population.
Thank you.
Anything else on that, Randy, or?
No, I just wanted to find out how difficult it would be to allow the kokanee to be filleted on site there, as opposed to being taken off site and done.
Yeah, and I think, there's no slot on kokanee there. I think as long as we can identify kokanee, I think that would probably work for us. It becomes a little more problematic because of Jay mentioned with cutthroat. But I mean, if we want to allow kokanee fillets with us being able to identify the fish by having some identifying characteristics like skin left on, I think that probably would work.
So the board good with that?
I know there's a lot of kokanee fishermen that would appreciate that.
Is that something you'd like to make a motion on, Randy, or just information for the board?
Yeah, I'll make that a motion. I'll make a motion to allow the filleting of kokanee salmon at Strawberry Reservoir as long as the skin is left intact.
A motion, do we have a second?
Byron, I've just got a question there. Do we need to just pick Strawberry? Does that need to cover the rest of our lakes? I know everybody likes to fillet fish. And what do you think, Randy?
I think at all of our other lakes, it allows filleting there. It's just that one particular one that does not.
Okay.
Now, is that going to be a problem for law enforcement to this motion?
This is Jay again, Chief of Law Enforcement. One thing to consider is also we would need to probably add rainbow trout into that mix, or potentially consider that. There's sometimes identification problems between the kokanee and a rainbow trout as well, which again, there's not a size restriction there, but something to consider.
So question, we're only requesting for kokanee. You can't play cutthroat or rainbow trout there now, is that correct? Or you can?
You cannot fillet any trout or salmon there right now.
So with this motion, it would only allow kokanee, so we should not be affecting cutthroat or rainbow.
That would be my understanding of this motion.
Is that correct, Randy Dirth?
Yes, that's the way I understand it.
Kokanee only?
Yes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'd ask a question again to Officer Shirley. If it's only with kokanee and has an identifier skin on it, rainbow and cutthroat still have to be intact. They can catch the measurables. With that motion, do you see that being a problem?
Again, my only comment would be that identifying the fish for some of our anglers that are not kokanee salmon fishing people is usually what we run into, in that they are unable to identify that fish. So just allowing filleting of fish of any species at strawberry would have some implications as far as what it is. If the skin is intact, that might be fine, but the regulation is any fish with cutthroat markings on it. And, from just experience, anglers that are not used to being at strawberry, they're the ones that we typically have our problem with, that are identifying a fish. So they're very cautious on any fish to keep it, if it's between 15 to 22 inches and they're not sure what it is, our answer is to always err on the side of caution there. So I'm not sure that as long as people can identify the fish, I don't see it being a huge problem.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, this is Greg Hansen with the Utah Attorney General's Office. If I may take a second.
Go ahead, Greg.
There is one rule provision in our fishing rule that we may need to look at if this modification goes forward, and that's in R657 13-16. There is a reference to filleting of fish at certain reservoirs, and depending on how this motion moves forward, we would just need to make that modification with Randy and Chief Shirley. So just so the board's aware of that.
Thanks, Greg. I have a motion. I don't have a second. Motion dies for lack of a second then. That takes us down to item number 6, which is Angler Opportunity Assessment Update. This is informational. I purposely skipped over the action log, item number 3, because in Craig Walker's presentation, he addressed this item on the old business action log, and that was talking about going to limited entry fishing areas, and the state of Oregon is actually going to implement that in place. Is that something, Craig, you could give us an update on how that's going to work in Oregon?
Mr. Chairman, could
Yes.
I cut in for just a moment? I don't have a motion accepting the regulations from agenda item 5.
Stacy, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
This is Carl. I'll make the motion to accept the fishing regulations as presented and add to it that tagged fish, tagged northern pike on Utah Lake be returned, but that the catch and kill order for the rest of the northern pike stay in place.
I'll second that.
Can I just quickly ask for clarification? Does that proposal include this date change that I talked about earlier for Fish Lake?
Yes.
So the kokanee closure through September 9th on Fish Lake?
Yeah, I didn't add that because I thought that was part of the division's proposal, but the kokanee change at Fish Lake and the return the tagged fish at Utah Lake, the northern pike at Utah Lake.
You got that all, Stacy?
My second's good for all that too.
Have a motion, a second. Call for a vote. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
Motion passes with the amendments that were added to that. That takes us back to number 6 and number 3. Craig Walker, you want to just give us an update on that action item log that you had in your presentation?
Sure. Specific to the limited entry fishing, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Oregon right now is pursuing opening of previously closed areas for conservation purposes. Areas have been closed to fishing. They're looking to open those areas up to anglers on a limited entry basis because they feel that some of those populations right now can't afford a minimal amount of angling. So what we're doing is we're looking at those efforts in Oregon and viewing the public reaction to those efforts, as well as the benefits to Oregon Game and Fish prior to us investigating the use of limited entry opportunities in Utah. One of the reasons why we're taking this in a very metered manner is because we recognize the fact that potentially offering limited entry fishing opportunities to only a few anglers might jeopardize the benefits to hundreds of thousands of anglers in the state. So we want to be sure that we're making the right move, and we want to pay attention to what the public reaction to Oregon's moves are. They should be, I believe, wrapping their efforts up in 2023, I believe. And at that time, we will communicate with them on the issue and figure out how we're going to move forward on this.
Thanks, Craig. Any questions for Craig on that item? It's been on the action log for the last couple of years.
Byron, I just might say something there. Gosh, we've got world-class fishing in Utah. You guys have done a wonderful job. It's better fishing right now than it's been in my whole lifetime. And we want to preserve that and keep up the good work. So thank you for what you've done for our fishing here for our customers.
Thanks, Donnie.
Yeah, thanks, Donnie. I think that goes for all of us, that these presentations that we had, that we were able to review, were very informational and very professional. I just want to thank everyone that made a presentation to us, the informational items. So any questions from the board? These are not action items, they're just informational. So no questions. We'll move down to the Middle Provo River update. Item number 7 was informational. Board have any questions? Again, this was another great presentation on what's going on the Provo River. I was really impressed with the number of fish that are in that river. It's awesome. Everybody should be having a great opportunity to fish those rivers. That brings us down to number 8, Rule R657-62, Rule Amendments, Deployed Military. This is an action item. Director, do you want to give us the update on the comments you received?
Sorry about that. Having trouble getting off of mute. Yeah, I've got that right here. So again, only 3 comments, but 2 of the 3 folks that commented on this online were supportive of this administrative rule change.
Any questions from the board? Thanks, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions from the rack chairs? Go ahead and start with the rack summary of motions. Justin Oliver.
Yes, in the northern rack, we had a motion to accept the rule as presented with the, I'll just read, with the exception of to remove the words outside the continental U.S. and its territories from the definition. And we had a retired service member or a veteran on our board who discussed some things that talked about how being someone could be in boot camp or be deployed here in the continental United States and still be unable to apply or to get those points. And so we would like to see that we remove the words outside the continental US and its territories, and that motion passed unanimously.
So there was just one motion?
Yes, that was the only motion. Yes. So we accept, our motion was to remove that, to those words, and that motion passed unanimously. Yes.
Okay.
That was the only motion.
Brock McMillan?
The Central Region had a motion to accept the division's recommendation as presented, and that motion passed unanimously.
Thank you. Braden Richmond?
The Southern Region also had a motion to accept as presented, and it passed unanimous.
Thank you. Chris Wood?
The Southeastern RAC had a motion to accept as presented, and that passed unanimously as well.
Thank you. Brett Prevadil?
Yes, the Northeast RAC also had a motion to pass as presented, which passed unanimously.
Thank you. Discussion from the board on this item or clarifications on the racks?
I'd like to ask a question to Greg concerning with the continental United States and the language that they put in, if that was necessary or if he felt like it's covered the way it was presented.
This is Greg Hansen, Utah AG's office, and that was a topic that we struggled with internally as well, as far as how and who these exemptions apply to. And as long as the motion is clear as to who qualifies for this benefit and who doesn't, we can work with those rule modifications. Lindy and Director Fowlks have both struggled with this, and if this is the direction the board would like to go, we can make those rule modifications as you guys deem fit. Director, if you have anything else you'd like to weigh in on that, I don't want to speak for you, but rule-wise, we can make it happen.
So, yeah, this is Mike Fox, the director. We had a lot of discussion on this. We really wanted to provide the opportunity to folks who are actually deployed and are not able to take advantage. I suppose if the motion were clear that it's outside of the state of Utah, that they're deployed outside of the state of Utah and not able to participate in the activity, that we would provide that benefit to them. So I would ask that the motion, if you make a motion, to make sure it clarifies that they can't be deployed in the state of Utah.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions from the board? Marty, you just popped up.
No, no issues. It was the same thing. We were looking at what we were trying to achieve with this rule, and was it something to do purely with deployment, no matter where it was, or was it more to do with the burdens associated with getting outside the United States? And obviously, we never kind of came to a clear decision on that in your mind, and so this would be a good policy issue for the board to weigh in on and make a decision.
Thanks, Marty. Okay, board, what would you like to do on this item?
I guess I'd like to make a motion that to be eligible for this this opportunity, that you have to be active military outside of the state of Utah.
Okay, we have a motion from Randy.
I'll second that, Byron.
Second from Donnie. Any questions?
I would just ask a question to the director, making sure that covers the intent.
Yeah, I think with that motion that we can craft that rule so that it's clear. Greg will help us with that.
Thanks.
With that, I'll call for a vote. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton,
Yes.
motion passes. That takes us down to item 9, the conservation permit audit. This was another action item for the board. This didn't go out to the public. Mike, do you want to summarize any comments on that we received?
So I was just reviewing those. I can't find any comments on this particular item.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Questions from the rack chairs? Any discussion from the board on this item? Item 9, conservation permit audit. Kenny Johnson, Administrative Services Section Chief.
This Carl, I'll just make the comment that I believe this program is tremendously beneficial, and that the division has taken steps to make it easier to understand, and have done an excellent job of accounting for the money. So I'll make the recommendation that we accept the conservation program audit.
Thanks,
Mr.
Carl.
Chair, this is Wade. I would second that motion and echo that there has been some significant strides and steps made to just make this process and this whole program more transparent. And I think there's the appetite from the public definitely seems to have accepted this more than it has been in the past. So I just appreciate everybody that's worked on this.
Thanks, Wade. Anybody else comments? Call for a vote. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous. That takes us down to item 10, conservation permit annual report by Justin Shannon. This was an informational item. Are there any questions from the board on this item? Mike, did you get any comments on this item? Director? Mike?
Yeah, it was, sorry, coming off of mute. There were no comments. It was an informational, so there were no comments.
Hearing nothing.
I'd like to thank the divisionist, Carl. They always look forward. We try to avoid all the issues that we can, and I appreciate Justin and his presentation.
Thanks, Carl. Anyone else? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dirth, unmute, Randy.
I'm sorry. Are we voting on an informational item? I don't think we need to vote on this one.
No, you're right. You're correct. We'll skip down to number 10, conservation permit annual report. We just did that. Number 11 is Cougar Conservation and Expo permit request, Darren DeBlois. You all saw that. Any comments, questions from the board? It's an action item. Was there any comments on that one, Mike? Director?
Sorry. Yeah, there were a few comments and they were supportive of the recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions from the RAC? The board had no questions, so call for a vote on this item, which is an action item.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. We accept it as presented.
A motion, to have a second?
Mr. Chairman, did we want to hear the RAC reports on this? This went through the RACs as well, did it not?
Yeah. Thank you.
It did not, Wade. This didn't go to the racks.
Okay, thanks. I would second that then, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Wade. Call for a vote. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 12 is to repeal Rule R657-38, wildlife sensitive species. This is an action item. Are there any comments on this, Mike?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there were 3 comments, 2 supporting the recommendation, 1 opposed to the recommendation. This is obviously the recommendation that came out of our working session just a couple weeks ago.
Thanks, Director. Any questions from the board?
I guess I just want to make it clear to those that might watch this later. It's not doing away with a list. It's actually doing away with a duplicate list. There is another list of sensitive species that the state keeps. This is just a duplicate one that is being removed. That is correct, right?
Yes, this is the Director. We have the Wildlife Action Plan that we review and revise every 5 years. It has a list of species of the greatest conservation concern and need, and that's the list that we will be refining and using as we move forward to prioritize how we spend our money and what work we're doing.
That's why I'm very comfortable with repealing this particular rule.
Mr. Chairman, this is Wade. I just want to comment on this as well. This is now the 3rd time we've talked about it, so I don't know that we need to have those conversations all over again. But I just think it's important to mention that this list was not being used much anyway. It did not sound like it. Sounded like the working action list is the one that was being used, and this list was somewhat redundant. To me, it makes sense that we follow the legislature's suggestion and go ahead and repeal this and just continue doing the good work we're doing using the other list.
Thanks, Wade. Any other comment?
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we accept to repeal the rule
R657-38.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second to call for a vote. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
Motion passes. Darren DeBlois is staring at me because I skipped over his item, so we'll move back up to.
No, I think you got it.
We got it.
Yeah, we're good. You're so good, you do stuff and you don't even notice.
I need my right hand, left hand man to help me out here, Kevin and Mike. So we'll go to item 13 then. 2021 RAC board dates. This is an action item. Stacy sent that list out to all of us.
So, Mr. Chair, this is Director. There were a couple of public comments in support of this recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Stacy says that we're not going to have any hunt dates in there, so it shouldn't be affected like we have been in the past. Any questions from the rack chairs? Hearing none, pardon? Was that a comment from somebody from the rack? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and call for a motion to approve the 2021 rack board dates.
Mr. Chairman, this is Wade. I move that we approve the proposed 2021 rack and board dates.
Thanks, Wade. We have a second?
I'll second that, Byron.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Call for a vote. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
That brings us to the end of today's agenda. Is there any other business that the board would like to talk about or bring up at this point?
I would like to add to the comments from the director for Marty. Certainly appreciate all the work that you've done for the division, and especially the late nights and the work for the wildlife board, the individual calls that we've received. We know you'll do great work there. We know that you will take your work with wildlife and keep working on wildlife to preserve that there. And we appreciate it for all that you've done for us.
Likewise, Marty, I'd like to thank you also for everything you've done for the division, public in this state, and especially the wildlife board to keep us on the right track.
Thank you all, for your support and the incredible job that you do. And this was an extremely difficult decision. In the end, I just felt that I could maybe help the division more in this, because I'd be able to help a new person come in and kind of get up to speed, being available. And that was one of my conditions of accepting this new assignment, was that I would still be able to consult and talk and hopefully share some of what I've learned over the last 22 years working with wildlife and help lead wildlife in a great position as far as their legal counsel. I mean, it is in a great position with Greg. He's an outstanding attorney, and he will continue to do an excellent job. And thank you all.
Thanks again, Marty, for all you've done for the state of Utah. And we wish you the best in your new career and hope to hear from you from time to time. Any other items from the board? Go just another minute and a half. We make this a 1 hour meeting, which got to be the shortest meeting on record. So, but I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion. This is Kevin Albrecht. Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Call for a vote. I'm going to stretch this out. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Andy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
Motion passes. I'd like to thank everybody that's helped put this meeting together, and all the information that was provided to us by the division has been nothing but first class from your people, Mike, that the information we get to work with. So I just want to thank everybody for their time and efforts to make this really successful. So I wish you all the best till we meet again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Take care, all.
Thank you.